right. All right, are we ready? It sounded like that was the recording button.
Yep, go for it. The floor is yours.
All right, awesome. Let me just get my let's see here. Get my screen shared. Sorry, I'm working on two screens, so I apologize if I don't look at the camera, which is not any other message than just trying to make sure that I'm giving you guys the same information that I'm looking at as I'm walking through everything. Well, again, just want to welcome you all to this presentation and also thank Ariel and everyone for arranging an opportunity to sit down and talk with you about Section 3, particularly as it relates to housing and community development, which is kind of an important part of it, but there's also application of Section 3 to public housing authorities. So I'd be more than happy to also review that, but we're going to focus a little bit more on housing and community development. If you haven't, you might have looked on HUD Exchange. It's a great website. There's a variety of different resources out there for Section 3, including but not limited to HUD's ICF sponsored Section 3 technical assistance training. It's actually a 3-day training. It's going through the end of December. And so if you haven't yet joined that training, I encourage you to look for any vacant spots. We did specific ones for Region 8, but it doesn't mean that you can't join the ones that are being shared for the other regions across the nation. So really great information that's being provided out there, as well as HUD Exchange has FAQs that are out on the website that help answer a lot of Section 3 questions, as well as a guidebook that's coming. So I'm going to dive right into the presentation, but I do want to say, as I don't know if anybody heard me while I was talking to Ariel, I have a cold and a cough, so I apologize if I'm coughing or stopping for a moment, take a drink of some water so that I can keep on going. I haven't had this much trouble, but I've been having this cough for about a week, and the doctor says it's just a regular cold, but geez, it feels a little bit more than what I'm used to. So at any rate, long story short, let's get started. And as Ariel just showed, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'll walk through some questions at the end, and we can always go back and revisit the slides. Let's see. I want to make sure I advance the slide correctly. Oh, there we go. All right. So as we think about Section 3, it's really important to really talk about the rule establishment of the timeline. So as you can see, the rule was established through the Housing and Community. Oops, I'm sorry. It went one further than what I wanted. It seems to be a little bit more sensitive. I don't know why. Sorry, everyone. I want to get back to the... Okay, I'm going to just let it do its thing. I might take a presentation if it doesn't seem to be doing what I want it to do. So we're just going to... Okay, I don't know what's going on, so we'll do it that way. I apologize. It seems like the presentation mode is a little finicky. So we'll keep it here, which is totally fine. So as you can see, the rule was established through the Housing, Community Development, or Housing and Urban Development Act of 1968. And over time, the application of the rule expanded. As you can see, in 1992, it was amended as part of the Housing and Community Development Act. And in 1995, Fair Housing Equal Opportunity Office published an interim rule that established the procedures that are found in 24 CFR Part 135. So while this interim rule was never finalized, the procedures have been used since, and the most recent new rule change that began in 2019 when FPM published the proposed regulations, which have now been finalized, but were proposed at the time in 24 CFR Part 75. So the new rule was published in September of 2020, And then it became effective in November of 2020. So that means that the 24 CFR Part 75 was effective as of November of 2020, and the reporting regulations began actually July 1st of 2021. So it's important to understand when the new rule became effective, because it provided a period of time between November and July for recipients and HUD programs to prepare for the reporting and compliance period. So this compliance period or development of that allows, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, the development of an implementation plan and the preparation for the communication that you'll need to have with not only the folks that you're working with, but the program contacts for all of the Section 3 applicable projects. So as you can see, there's several HUD programs that Section 3 applies to. And the list here on the screen gives you an idea of the variety of different program funds that it applies to. It's important to know that Section 3 also applies to HUD-funded public and Indian housing assistance for development, operating, and modernization expenditures. So it's important to note that when the new rule went into effect on November 30th, 2020, that tribes and tribally designated housing entities under the Indian Housing Block Grant and Indian Community Development Block Grant programs are no longer required to comply with Section 3. So the new requirements under the new Rule 24 CFR Part 75 do provide that contracts, subcontracts, grants, or subgrants would all be compliant or would all be required under the applicable programs that you see here under 24 CFR Part 75. So many programs that you might be working with, like CDBG, Home, or HTF, are fully or partially funded with HUD assistance trigger Section 3. The HUD funded portion, as well as the leveraged non-HUD funded portion, is covered. So separately, it's important to know that the direct assistance to homebuyer activities do not trigger Section 3. So just as a point of clarification too, if you have any questions about if a project is covered by Section 3, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to answer any specific details or questions about a specific project. So again, let's take a look at the timeline of Section 3. So first, the Section 3 rule was approved and published in September 2020. And so if there were projects that were funded prior to November 30th, 2020, the old rule still does apply. So contracts executed or projects for which assistance or funds were committed prior to November 30th, 2020 are still required to adhere to the requirements of the old rule. Recipients of such assistance or funds will be expected to maintain records of Section 3's statutory, regulatory, and contractual compliance, but will no longer be required to report Section 3 compliance in HUD in SPEARS. And HUD does not require funding recipients to change or alter contracts that were in place prior to the new Section 3 requirements becoming effective on November 30th, 2020. So next, on or after November 30th, 2020, Section 3 regulations that are found in 24 CFR Part 135, the old rule, have not applied and will not apply to new grants, commitments, contracts, or projects. So all recipients of public housing assistance are required to follow the new Section 3 rule, and HCD recipients are required to follow the new rule found in Part 75. So this means that recipients and employers for new grants, commitments, or contracts on or after November 30th, 2020 will need to document compliance with Section 3. So again, there was that transition period to help prepare and plan for the implementation of the new rule. And so you're during that time frame, November 30th through July 1st, even though reporting isn't going to be required, you are still expected to maintain records of that statutory, regulatory, and contractual compliance with Section 3. Again, no reporting in SPEARS, and then looking forward to the new reporting that began July 1st, 2021. And we'll get into the details of where those reports need to go in just a little bit. So if you have been working in that transition period and you have documented your compliance, you'll be set. You want to keep those records for the duration of time that's listed into CFR 200. Excuse me. So next we want to talk about the different parts of the rule. So as you can see here, 24 CFR Part 75 is broken up into 3 parts of a rule. Sorry, this cough never gets, I can't seem to get over it. Anyways, there are 3 parts of the rule: the Federal Register publication, the benchmark, and the delegation of authority. I'm so sorry. This is going to be a horrible recording. At any rate, let's talk about the delegation of authority. So as you can see from the slide, this is a significant change in the way the Section 3 rule has been identified. So first and foremost, you all might remember that FHEO had a large responsibility in compliance and monitoring and technical assistance with Section 3 as part of Part 135. However, with the new rule that has changed significantly, FHEO does not have that responsibility anymore. In fact, the responsibility has been delegated to FPM to provide technical assistance and best practices, as well as helping provide support through training in situations just like this to grantees or anybody across the region or the nation, as it were, for each region. And then monitoring and compliance is the responsibility of the program offices now. So the program office is where the original funding came from that would trigger Section 3 compliance. So let's look a little bit more into the different parts of the rule. So within Part 75, there are 4 specific parts. So we're going to talk really for HCD just about Part C, but it's going to be important to know that there are those 4 different parts or subparts of the rule that help guide the responsibilities that you have towards Section 3. So first, it's important to understand why the rule was created. So the impetus of the new rule in the Federal Register notice that was published in September of 2020 and that became effective November 2020 was to improve the effectiveness of the regulations, simplify and streamline the requirements, effectively benefit recipients to achieve the purpose of the statute, and promote economic opportunities for Section 3 workers and Section 3 business concerns. So to do that, the rule created definitions to better identify how you can comply to meet the impetus of the rule. So first and foremost, a Section 3 worker is any worker who currently fits or when hired within the past 5 years fits at least one of the following categories that you can see there. So the first, a low or very low income individual. So that would be 80% or less of area median income, a youth build participant, or someone employed by a Section 3 business concern. And documentation is a critical part of that compliance. So a Section 3 worker can self-certify, but it's important for you to collect documentation of that certification. Also, within the definition of a Section 3 worker, there's a targeted Section 3 worker. This is important because particularly under the benchmarks that we're going to be talking about, you have to ensure that within the 25% benchmark, that 5% of that benchmark come back to or are attributed to a targeted Section 3 worker. So as you can see here from the slide, there are 2 different definitions between a targeted Section 3 worker between public housing authorities and between housing community development recipients. And it's important if you're going to be combining projects where you have public housing funds or housing and combined with housing and community development funds, that you identify which part of the rule you're going to be using, how that data is going to be collected for the targeted Section 3 worker. But as you can see here, the housing community development recipient funds that go in will meet the definition of a targeted Section 3 worker that is employed by a Section 3 business concern or who currently fits when hired within the past or the previous 5 years, is living within the service area or neighborhood of the project, or a youth build participant. So we're going to talk a little bit about that service area because that's an important part of the housing and community development recipient funding process for documenting Section 3 compliance. So here you can see that there's a neighborhood service area definition. So to meet the definition of a targeted Section 3 worker, it needs to include a service area definition. So a service area or neighborhood of the project means an area within 1 mile of the Section 3 project, or if fewer than 5,000 people live within that 1 mile radius of the Section 3 project, then it's within a circle centered on the Section 3 project that is sufficient to encompass a population of 5,000 people, according to the most recent U.S. Census. Now, HUD is working on a tool to help you map this sort of centric area of a neighborhood service area so you can better identify your targeted Section 3 workers in a project. So we're hoping that mapping tool becomes readily available so that that helps all the projects meet the requirements of documenting that targeted Section 3 worker. So let's talk a little bit about Section 3 business concern. So as you just heard me say, one of the ways that a Section 3 worker can meet the definition of a Section 3 worker is by working and being employed by a Section 3 business concern. So the definition here is really important. So a Section 3 business concern is either one of these three, is 51% or more owned by low or very low income persons. So that is, again, persons who are 80% or less of area median income. 75% or more of the labor hours are performed by low or very low income persons, or 51% or more is of the business is owned by current residents of public housing or Section 8 assisted housing. So it is recommended that recipient agencies establish processes to certify Section 3 workers and Section 3 business concerns for employment and contracting opportunities. So thereafter, you should maintain a list of eligible workers and businesses by skill, capacity, or interest, and you can contact them on a periodic basis when employment and contracting opportunities become available to help you increase your ability to meet the Section 3 rule. Additionally, and we'll talk about it in just a moment, HUD recipients must meet certain benchmarks to demonstrate compliance with the Section 3 law. So having a Section 3 business concern or Section 3 worker on your project and having that list available to you will definitely aid your ability to quickly and readily meet the Section 3 targeted and Section 3 worker benchmarks. So when you are working on a project and you're trying to complete all the procurement process, one of the things that it's important to do is to establish a Section 3 status. So businesses can verify their own status at the time of the contract is awarded, but you will need to verify the documentation of that. So once you've verified a Section 3 business concern that has maintained its Section 3 status for as long as it continues to meet that definition, you can count for the project. You can count those labor hours from that Section 3 business concern throughout the duration of your project. So there's a great resource that we have, which is called the Business Registry, Section 3 Business Registry. We'll talk a little bit about that later. HUD has not verified the information submitted by those businesses, but it's a great tool to use not only as recipients to find Section 3 businesses, but also to encourage them to register so that you can continue to use them and they can be used in other Section 3 projects in and around the area to help increase the employment opportunities. Additionally, Section 3 recipients must maintain Section 3 worker validation as well. So this means maintaining worker self-certification that their income is below the income limit, or they participate in a means-tested program such as public housing or Section 8. A certification from a PHA or other means-tested housing program is good. Employer certification for the worker's income is below the income limit is also good. And employer certification that the worker is employed by a Section 3 business concern is also a good way of documenting that verified definition, meeting the definition of a Section 3 worker. So Section 3 defers to other local, state, and federal laws or regulations. So if there's a local ordinance which is preventing you from asking income of potential employees, then you would want to follow that local ordinance. So this means that you would need to find another way to establish the Section 3 status, such as a participant, the worker being a participant in a means-tested program or a youth build participant. So let's dive a little bit deeper into the portion of the Section 3 rule as it specifically applies to the housing and community development. So as I stated earlier, the intent of Section 3 is to provide economic opportunities to a person who is low or very low income, so 80% or less of area median income. So Section 3 directs HUD recipients and those entities that receive certain HUD funds to hire or contract in the community where the funds are spent. And so because of the income requirements related to those funds, this supports workers and provides a path towards self-sufficiency within that community. So that's why Section 3 is important. It's because it provides employment opportunities, training opportunities, and contract opportunities for those individuals or businesses that are qualified as Section 3 workers or Section 3 business concerns. So Section 3 has moved away from hiring requirements and also stopped the use of the term resident, and now looks to use the word worker and also continued employment for workers that have been on a project or work for a Section 3 business concern. So Section 3 is also important because it's the law. So recipients are encouraged and required to demonstrate compliance, but the benefits of Section 3 expand economic benefit to eligible project beneficiaries and the eligible workers employed on a HUD-funded project. So it's important to note that Section 3 is a preference, not an entitlement. And Section 3 workers and business concerns must still demonstrate they have the ability or capacity to perform the specific job or successfully complete the contract and employment they are seeking. To better help assist with the implementation of Section 3, HUD recipients can find 2 new CPD notices for home and HTF and a second one for CDBG. So recipients of HUD financial assistance and subrecipients are responsible for compliance of Section 3. So it's important to include the responsibilities of Section 3 compliance in your contracts or subcontracts so that you can demonstrate Section 3 compliance and the efforts that you've made to carry out the Section 3 rule. So in order to successfully target Section 3 workers and businesses for employment and contracting opportunities, you must establish and maintain an effective Section 3 program. And we found that hiring a Section 3 coordinator or assigning one individual the responsibility of coordinating all Section 3 related activities is instrumental in reaching Section 3's employment and contracting goals. So Section 3 applies to housing and community development funding based on the type of project, and the threshold or total HUD funds committed to a project. So a project that includes rehabilitation, housing construction, or other public construction, which could include economic development or public facilities or infrastructure construction, is considered a project under the Section 3 rule. So as you can see here, Section 3 compliance is triggered for housing community development projects when the total amount of all HCD funds exceeds $200,000. Also, for lead healthy homes, the threshold is $100,000. And if you have any questions about that very specific program, please let me know. I'd be happy to talk with you further about that. But to keep it easy, let's consider just the $200,000 threshold coming from HCD funds. So as an example, if you had $100,000 of home funds going into a housing rehabilitation project and $100,000 going into that same project from CDBG, that example would trigger Section 3 compliance. If you had a housing rehabilitation project where only $100,000 of HTF funds were going into the project. That would not trigger Section 3 because it doesn't meet the threshold of $200,000 total HCD funds. So while there is a dollar threshold for Section 3 HCD recipients, there's also a dollar threshold for public and Indian housing projects, which is actually just $1. So any amount of funds that goes into projects that are funded with public and Indian housing funds, that would trigger Section 3. So it's really important to understand what funds are going into a project, particularly if you're going to be combining types of funding from HUD. So let's look at that a little bit more closely when we're talking about multiple funding sources. So if you're completing a RAD deal that includes more than the $200,000 in HCD funds, such as home and CDBG, then both the HCD recipient and the housing authority have to report on Section 3. But you, as an HCD grantee, may follow the normal requirements under Subpart C, or you can rely on the housing authority's definitions and requirements as outlined in Subpart B of the rule. It's important to decide how you're going to be coordinating and collaborating on a project at the beginning and what part of the rule an HCD grantee is going to follow so that you have clear communication and guidance into what kind of information you're going to be asking from the grantee or subgrantee or contractors in order to document your Section 3 compliance. So for projects where multiple grantees are contributing, think of a large multifamily development with home funds from the participating jurisdiction with HTF or additional home funds from the state. This is still under program area review, and we'll get to a little bit more specifics. Actually, it's been clarified a little bit more in IDIS with the CPD notice. But if you do have questions about how that flows and where it is in IDIS, please do reach out, as we're definitely walking through the reporting with everybody starting with this July 1st, 2021 reporting period. And we want to make sure that you're successful in how you're reporting that and accurately. So it is going to be reported by program in IDIS. So I want to make sure that you're comfortable with how you approach that. Again, you can also reach out to your CPD rep for more information about that reporting responsibility as well. So let's talk about the Section 3 HCD contract provisions. So what is the best way to ensure that you've helped meet the Section 3 requirements? Well, it's putting it in writing. When contracting with Section 3 financing, the rule requires that funding sources are to include requirements with any contract, subcontract, or subrecipient agreement. So other than material-only contracts which don't trigger Section 3. So Section 3 applies even if these provisions are not included in the contract. So no omission exception is allowed. So even if you don't put it in your contract provisions, it doesn't mean that you can avoid complying with Section 3. It's best practice to ensure that all of your contracts that trigger Section 3 include Section 3 contractual provisions because they're required. So let's look a little bit more at the new rule from the benchmarks perspective. So the new rule indicated that there was a key change, and the specific change was about meeting the benchmarks to document compliance with Section 3. So the benchmark Federal Register notice goes into great detail about this. It established a new focus towards labor hours and a creation of targeted Section 3 workers, as we previously discussed. So this benchmark means that 25% of the total labor hours on a project is to be from Section 3 worker or workers and Section 3 businesses. So note that the total number of labor hours, including targeted Section 3 workers, is 25%, not a combined rate of 30%, with the 5% coming from targeted Section 3 workers. So the benchmark goal is 25%, and within that 25%, 5% of the labor hours should be coming from a targeted Section 3 worker. The benchmark goals include the calculation of all combined hours over the amount of Section 3 worker and targeted Section 3 worker hours, which can be included as a Section 3 business concern. The Section 3 benchmarks are minimum targets that must be reached in order for the department to consider a recipient in compliance. So if you go over the 25% benchmark and say you have a project where 30% of all labor hours came from Section 3 workers and targeted Section 3 workers, you've definitely met the benchmark. And there's good reporting that can be done to show that you've exceeded the benchmark. So it's just a minimum requirement. Feel free to go in excess of the 25%. If an agency fails to fully meet the Section 3 benchmarks, you must adequately document the efforts that you've taken to meet the numerical goals. So again, the development of policies and procedures for tracking labor hours and other requirements to ensure compliance with the new rule is of paramount importance to the success of your Section 3 compliance, and also ensuring that you've shared those policies and procedures that you're developing for Section 3 with contractors, subrecipients, subgrantees, subcontractors, or other contractors that will be working on the project with you. So let's walk through this in another way. When HCD funds are invested in a project and have a combined total of $200,000, this triggers Section 3. This means that the total number of labor hours must be collected, as well as the total number of Section 3 and targeted Section 3 labor hours. To meet the Section 3 compliance, no less than 25% of the total labor hours must come from Section 3 businesses, Section 3 workers, and combined with targeted Section 3 workers. Additionally, and again, and most importantly, within the total 25% of the labor hours from a Section 3 worker, 5% must be from that targeted Section 3 worker. So again, important to note the definitions that we talked about earlier of a Section 3 worker, targeted Section 3 worker, and a Section 3 business concern. So let's look a little bit more about the labor hours. So the goal here is not to create additional reporting mechanisms, but instead to use what you already are using in your payroll systems or the contractor's payroll systems. So recipients may report their own labor hours or that of a subrecipient, contractor, or subcontractor based on the employer's good faith estimate of all labor hours or of a full-time or part-time employee based on the existing employer systems, unless the project is otherwise subject to requirements specifying time and attendance reporting. So potential bonuses for training and hiring Section 3 workers in professional service areas can help your project. So professional service contracts for non-construction services that require an advanced degree or professional licensing are not required to be reported as part of the total Section 3 labor hours. This exclusion does not cover all non-construction services. However, professional service staff labor hours are permitted to be reported, and you will be given credit for reporting opportunities created for professional services by including those professional labor service hours that are Section 3 in the numerator, not the denominator. So you don't include it in the total number of labor hours. But if a professional service is a Section 3 business or a Section 3 worker or targeted Section 3 worker, it can be included in the numerator. So what is just the total of the Section 3 labor hours? The reporting structure in the professional services labor hours in the numerator and not in the denominator allows you to create an increased percentage of Section 3 labor hours in your project and not add it to the denominator of the total Section 3 labor hours. So that's why we're looking at it as a bonus. So if you're able to report Section 3 hires in professional service area, I would highly encourage you to factor this into the processes and procedures that you develop to create a successful Section 3 program. So let's look a little bit about safe harbor. Safe harbor is that minimum, the ability to meet the minimum benchmarks. So recipients will be considered to have complied with the Section 3 requirements and met the safe harbor in the absence of evidence to the contrary if they certify that they have followed the required prioritization of effort and met or exceeded the applicable Section 3 benchmarks. So if a recipient agency or contract does not meet the benchmark requirements, the recipient must provide evidence that they have made a number of qualitative efforts on the qualitative nature of its activities and those its contractors and subcontractors pursued, and provide documentation in a form that HUD will prescribe. So let's review. If you self-certify, if a worker self-certifies, and you as a grantee self-certify that you have followed the prioritization efforts under 75.19 and meet and exceed the 5% within the 25% benchmark, then you're good. So again, these are reported on by project. And so each project has to meet, that's triggers Section 3, those Section 3 benchmarks and safe harbor. So as you're developing processes, you want to definitely make sure that you're following the prioritization efforts that are listed in 24 CFR 75.19.
Hey, Jennifer, it looks like I missed a question here that we have in the chat box.
Sure.
Kind of going back a little bit. When determining the 80% AMI, do you need to use the 80% AMI based on the family size?
Oh, great question. Section 3 is different in the way that it looks at the AMI. It's not for the household, it's for the worker itself. So it's only for the individual worker. So as you're looking for the AMI to determine Section 3 eligibility for the worker or the Section 3 business or targeted Section 3 worker, you're going to be looking for just that worker or the individuals that would be making up the definition of a Section 3 business concern to document that they met that compliance. It's a great question. You also want to use the income determination as you look for the location of where that worker is living, not where the project is located. So also something that's important. So the short answer is it's on an individual basis based off the location of where the worker is residing. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll keep on going through.
That is the only one we have so far.
Awesome. Well, feel free to put your questions in the chat. We can always come back to them. So these are really important. These are the HCD requirements that you're wanting to make sure that you're prioritizing. So once you've identified and understand that the Section 3 rule has been triggered on your project, you want to make sure that you take certain actions relating to the employment and training prioritization and contracting prioritization that you can see listed here. These HCD requirements are part of the compliance when you're meeting safe harbor, and you have to certify that your efforts have been prioritized in this fashion. So the Business Registry and Opportunity Portal are online platforms that could help you with meeting Section 3 efforts of hiring and procuring Section 3 businesses. And as a reminder, even though Section 3 is only a preference, not an entitlement, it still allows you a good way to start to communicate and open up a conversation with workers or businesses to help make sure that that priority has been given to them when there is a project that triggers Section 3. Again, the workers and businesses still need to demonstrate that they have the ability or capacity to perform that specific job duty. So let's take a look at an example, kind of putting it all into action. So let's assume HCD funds meet the Section 3 threshold and are used for an eligible project. And at the end of the project, you determine that there are 4,000 hours that were reported for all of the total workers and all of the labor hours attributed to the project. Of those 4,000 hours, you found that 1,200 hours are attributed to Section 3 workers, and 500 hours were completed by targeted Section 3 workers. So the question is would they have met the benchmark for safe harbor, assuming there's no evidence to the contrary and the prioritization efforts were completed? Well, let's let's take a look further. The answer is, of course, that of the total Section 3 labor hours, it would have been 30% of the total labor hours were completed by Section 3 laborers. And of the 4,000 hours, we find that 12% of the targeted Section 3 workers' labor hours were contributing. So that's definitely in excess of the 25-5 rule. So, but what would have happened if the situation were different and the benchmark was not met? You would still need to document your actions that you had taken, not only to meet the safe harbor and the prioritization, but also document the qualitative efforts that you and your subrecipients, subgrantees, contractors, or subcontractors took to comply with Section 3, as we discussed earlier. So let's take a look at the qualitative efforts to better understand that. So if reporting indicates that you're not able to meet the Section 3 benchmark for your project, you must report in a method that's been prescribed by HUD, which is, the CBD notice provides really great information about how to start to document and report on Section 3. But additional information is always forthcoming. And you'll have to report on the qualitative nature of the activities and the contractors and subcontractors pursued as part of the Section 3 rule. So such qualitative efforts may, for example, include, but are not limited to, those on this screen. Notice that one of the highlighted areas is the use of the Section 3 Business Registry and HUD Opportunity Portal. Documentation of qualitative efforts using these two HUD-supported portals also helps the businesses for other projects that they might be, or workers that they might be engaged with, that also triggers Section 3. But it helps to encourage them to register in the Opportunity Portal in the Section 3 Business Registry, which helps in the future projects that you have to reach back out to them and ensure that you're doing your best due diligence in engaging them in Section 3 projects. So as you develop an implementation plan for Section 3, it may be helpful to engage this process and the use of Section 3 in the Opportunity Portal in the implementation of your processes and procedures for not only yourself, but your subcontractors and contractors as well. So let's look a little bit about the implementation of a Section 3 written plan to best and most successfully carry out your Section 3 responsibilities. So to be most successful in your reporting, it is important to develop, design, and implement procedures to comply with the requirements of Section 3. So recipients must take an active role in ensuring Section 3 compliance. The first step is implementing procedures to ensure that all parties, including residents and businesses, contractors and subcontractors, comply with Section 3 and maintain records verifying that compliance. So a written Section 3 plan is an effective and recommended process to successfully implement the Section 3 rule and communicate consistent and reliable processes that will be managed by each project. So while we're developing templates that will be made available in the future, it is important to begin to establish your own procedures for the implementation of Section 3. How your agency develops an approach to be compliant with Section 3 is, again, a critical, important part of implementing Section 3. So as you develop your plan, we definitely recommend that you include your partners and contractors, subcontractors in the planning process and provide the best and most effective way to carry out a procedure with their engagement, to educate them and also help to educate yourselves about the easiest and most compliant way the easiest way to meet that compliance and kind of bridge that gap between documentation and meeting the compliance and intent of Section 3, particularly as it turns into the reporting requirements. So we're here to help. And again, if you haven't visited the HUD Exchange for more information, I would highly encourage you to do that. Some great ways to look at the development and communication approach for Section 3 is to help create a working link with developers and contractors. with capable Section 3 businesses so that there's a communication corridor happening. Additionally, recipient agencies may direct Section 3 business concerns to organizations that provide capacity building training. You also have the responsibility to ensure contractors and subcontractors have an awareness of and comply with the Section 3 benchmarks and responsibilities as well. So recipients will ensure compliance by Section 3 by assessing the hiring and subcontracting needs of contractors, regularly monitoring contractor compliance, assisting and actively cooperating with HUD in obtaining compliance of contractors, penalizing noncompliance, and providing incentives for good performance, and refraining from entering into contracts with any contractor that previously failed to comply with the requirements of Section 3. So developing that as part of your Section 3 written plan will help you be most successful and help clearly communicate with those parties that are engaged in your Section 3 program and project. So HCD is moving towards two types of reporting. So individual project reporting through grant systems such as IDIS, and an annual benchmark report that is rolled up from the individual project reporting that shows whether the grantee met the safe harbor provisions. So more information is provided in the CPD notice and will be provided in the future regarding these decisions through additional resources such as the forthcoming guidebook. Additionally, CPD is grantees that receive CPD assistance will receive information about IDIS and DRGR separately from those systems about any updates related to Section 3 reporting. Also wanted to share that if you are unfamiliar with how to report in IDIS for Section 3, do feel free to reach out to your CPD rep or myself. We'd be happy to answer the questions. But IDIS has been updated so that you should be able to update or enter information and report in to IDIS all of the final activities and total labor hours and qualitative efforts as it is applicable if you haven't met the benchmarks in Section 3 compliance in IDIS. So also if you're using DRGR, that system hasn't been updated as well. And RAD has its own reporting system. PIH is actually getting a new updated system, which we hope is going to be online very shortly, as well as Healthy Homes Grant will be reporting in their system. So let's talk a little bit about the Opportunity Portal and the Business Registry. So there are two platforms right now that HUD supports in order to help with Section 3 compliance. And also really these forums are to connect workers and businesses to Section 3 projects and grantees or contractors to workers or other businesses that can help them meet the Section 3 compliance. We are just about actually to update this system so that it's easier and more collaborative together. So the Opportunity Portal and the Business Registry will work together as one system instead of these two platforms. And so you'll see the same information just in a different format and probably with some different URLs that I'm providing you. Sorry that I don't have that information today, but it's going to be updated. I think even by the end of next week, if not sooner. And so I'm happy to provide more information about that and walk anybody through information that might be helpful. Additionally, HUD will be putting out YouTube videos to help any business or worker feel comfortable to get into the Section 3 Business Registry Opportunity Portal to register or post their information. So let's talk a little bit about what that means and how to access these portals. So first and foremost, the Opportunity Portal is really intended to help match residents to jobs and training opportunities and businesses to contracting opportunities. So it's important to know that users, any user, can search jobs or contracts and businesses by keyword, location, city, town, state, county, that kind of a thing. And a sign-in is not required to search. However, if you're going to be posting employment opportunities or or contracting opportunities, a login is required. And login.gov is a shared service from GSA. It's a very simple simple user login, and you can create your own profile as a business or a worker to post your resume or post contract opportunities. Additionally, grantee agencies such as yourselves can go into the opportunity portal and also post contracting opportunities, or you can delegate that to your contractors or subcontractors to encourage them to hire Section 3 workers if they don't have them, or to continue to open up and encourage businesses to be part of a Section 3 project. Additionally, and as you can see here, the contract opportunity page is a portal that allows businesses to create access to opportunities so that recipients and subrecipients or general contractors can find them. So it's a multifunctional page, but it helps a grantee get to contract and the contractor to get to a Section 3 business. So it really is kind of a convening platform so that businesses and grantees and workers can all meet under the same conversation of a project or contract opportunity. Or even, like I said, a business can reach out to a worker who posts their resume on in the opportunity portal. Next, the Section 3 Business Registry and Opportunity Portal, as I said, will be combined. At this point, the Section 3 Business Registry is very easy to use for a business to register as a Section 3 business concern. They can self-certify at this time. No verification needed to enter into the Section 3 Business Registry. That verification is done once you're contracting them to work on a Section 3 project. But as you can see here, there's a couple of easy, simple steps that a business can walk through just to simply determine if they're a Section 3 business concern. They can walk through these questions, and then if they find that they are a Section 3 business concern, fill out the registration process, which is really a simple process as well, and they can be listed on there. They will have to recertify after a short period of time. But again, that's just in the Section 3 Business Registry. They'll be verified by grantees during the contracting process on an actual project. So again, contracting opportunities here for contractors to be part of the process if they want to post contracting opportunities to encourage Section 3 workers to find them. So here is just a quick snapshot of the screen of how to register a Section 3 business. As you can see, very simple, easy questions, name of the business and contact information, et cetera, et cetera. This allows, with quick, easy access, the contractor to also post job opportunities that they might be interested in finding Section 3 workers on the business registry. So all of the hiring process happens outside of the opportunity portal and Section 3 business registry. But again, it's a tool or platforms where contractors and workers can kind of connect with each other and then complete the hiring process outside of the portal. Just wanted to show kind of the simple, easy screens that it would take for a contractor to complete. And you can see here, it's easy for anybody to get in there and search for a business. You don't have to have a login to search for a business, but rather any business can look through there, or grantee or user, a worker, and then they can reach out to that business with more questions and information. I wanted to also share some brochures that I've created. I'm in the process of updating them when the new platforms come out, but creating some very simple marketing tools could be wise as well to help with the communication that you'll be having with your contractors or general contractors to encourage them to become active in the Section 3 portal and opportunity portal as well. So if there's any questions, you can always reach out to me, and happy to answer anything that you might have as it specifically relates to a project or the rule or anything like that. If there's reporting or monitoring questions, I would highly encourage you to reach out to your CPD rep. They're really the go-to in regards to what the expectation of that will be. But any questions, Ariel, that I haven't maybe addressed?
I don't have any questions here in the chat box, but does anyone in the audience have any questions? You can raise your hand and unmute yourself or put them in the chat box. We have about 4 minutes here. So any dying questions out there, please ask.
Well, and I apologize for my voice and my coughing. That's just not going to be a great recording, but hopefully it's good information to listen to and skip over my cough.
All right. Debbie asks, how can I get access? All right. So this recording, we'll get it posted on our website where we have all our trainings. So once it takes about a week to get these recordings up, just because our staff person who usually puts them up has left. So we're kind of in the interim right now. But would you mind sharing your webinar or your PowerPoint with me, Jennifer, to share out?
You bet. I'd be happy to, Ariel.
Awesome. So then I'll send out a follow-up email when the recording is on our website, and I'll share the PowerPoint as well. Any other questions? All right. If not, we'll let Jennifer rest her voice. Get better. We appreciate you joining us today. And again, I'll also share out Jennifer's information again as well when I send that email. Otherwise, I will give everyone 2 minutes back to their day.
All right. Thank you, everyone, and take care.